And if I told you that your child, just 3 years old, can hold within themselves the vivid and detailed memory of a life they never lived? Imagine your son, in the middle of a game, describing a stranger's house, a job he never had, or crying with longing for people you never knew. This is not a legend. It is a real phenomenon, seriously studied for decades. Psychiatrist Stevenson from the University of Virginia documented thousands of cases like these around the world. How is this possible? What are these small voices trying to tell us about the greatest mysteries of all, who we are and where we come from? The answer may change everything.
So the big question that remains is all of this just a very powerful imagination, or a child listening to stories and repeating them afterwards? It's there that the thing becomes deeply intriguing, because when you stop to look closely at these accounts, as serious researchers have done, you discover details that are simply impossible to ignore.
We will take the case of a boy in Sri Lanka named Nisanka. At just 2.5 years old, he began to talk about a previous life as a boy from a wealthy family in a distant city. He asked to be taken to his other home. He described it with a wealth of detail: the mansion, the family car, and even the traffic accident that, according to him, took his life. The most striking thing? He had a paralyzing fear, an absolute panic whenever he saw trucks passing on the street, a fear that had no explanation in his current life. His family, initially skeptical, decided to follow the clues the boy gave them. They went to the so-called city, and to everyone's shock, they found the family he described. The family confirmed that their son had died exactly in a truck accident, years before Nisanka was born. Coincidence? Perhaps. But what happens when these coincidences repeat themselves hundreds of times in completely different cultures around the globe?
This is what led psychiatrist Dr. Stevenson of the University of Virginia to dedicate his entire career to this mystery. He was not a mystic. He was a skeptical, meticulous scientist. He traveled the world for over 4 decades, and his method was investigative, almost police-like. He interviewed the child meticulously, noting every name, every place, every seemingly insignificant detail they remembered. Then he would move to the field. He located the family and locality described without informing them and compared the narratives. In many cases, such as that of a boy in India who remembered having been a teacher named Prakash, the number of hits was astonishing. The child not only got the name and profession right, but also described intimate details of the house, the layout of the rooms, and even where certain personal objects were stored. Stevenson cataloged over 2,500 cases like this. But there is more. The physical aspect also enters into this story. In various accounts, the child presented birthmarks or congenital defects that matched exactly the injuries described in their past life. A boy who said he had been killed with a shotgun and who had a set of small, round birthmarks on his back in the pattern of a shotgun. A girl who remembered having died after being hit by a train and who had been born with a deformity in her arm and leg, precisely on the side that would have been crushed. How to explain this? How could the mind of a child, however imaginative it may be, influence their own physical body to carry these marks? With each case, the question becomes stronger, more urgent. If it is not memory, then what the hell is happening? And what does traditional science, with all its tools, have to say about these archives of evidence that seem to challenge the rules of the game? Facing a pile of such well-documented cases, the world of ideas enters a silent battleground. On one side, conventional science, which needs to explain the inexplicable with the tools it already possesses. On the other, a worldview that accepts the possibility that our consciousness is something that transcends the physical brain. And in the middle of it all are the children, with their stories that challenge any simple explanation. The skeptics, of course, have their hypotheses. The first line of defense is cryptomnesia. It's a complicated name for a simple idea. The child may have heard, without anyone noticing, a conversation, a story on TV, or a rumor, and then their brilliant mind transformed those fragments into a vivid personal narrative. Another explanation is pure and simple fantasy. Children's imagination is powerful, And perhaps these are just elaborate stories to attract attention or process complex emotions. That's all well and good. The problem begins when we focus on the details. How could a child from a rural village in India in the 1970s accurately describe the interior of a large city store that they had never visited, including the arrangement of the merchandise and the name of the deceased former owner who had died years before? The transmission of information in these cases seems logically impossible.
It is there that the spiritist perspective, based on the works of Allan Kardec and decades of phenomenological study, offers a direct answer, which for many sounds like the most logical in the face of the evidence. They are genuine memories. The central idea is reincarnation. The spirit, that consciousness that we are, has already lived other times. Upon being reborn, it goes through what is called the veil of forgetting, a natural mechanism that allows us to focus on the challenges of the new existence without the overwhelming emotional weight of the past. However, like any mechanism, it can fail, especially in the first years of life, when the current personality has not yet been fully consolidated and the brain is in development. These spirit memories can leak. They are echoes of a previous life overflowing. This would explain not only the verifiable details, but also inexplicable phobias, such as the fear of water in those who claim to have drowned, or early skills, such as a child who, without ever having had contact, shows a terrifying familiarity with a complex musical instrument.
But this explanation, however complete it may seem, raises an even more profound and uncomfortable question. If we accept that these memories are real, that they are not failures of the mind, but windows to the soul's past, then we must face the next logical step. What are these accounts, when viewed as a whole, actually showing? Is there a pattern behind them? Why do some souls seem to carry these memories with more force than others? Will the way a life ends have the power to mark the next in such an indelible way? The answer may lie in the dark and repetitive patterns that emerge when we put all these puzzle pieces together.
And when we begin to gather these stories, a pattern emerges, and it is dark and revealing. The vast majority of children who clearly remember a past life describe a violent, sudden, or traumatic death. Drownings, accidents, falls, war injuries. It seems that the shock of death, the energy of an abrupt and emotionally charged end, creates a crack in the veil of forgetting. It's as if that final memory were burned into the spirit, and the new, more sensitive child's brain captures its echo.
But there is another pattern, more beautiful and hopeful, the continuity of love. It is not uncommon for these children to identify people from their previous life who are around them now, such as parents or siblings. This suggests that groups of souls travel together, reincarnating together to learn, repair mistakes, and strengthen bonds. So, what is the ultimate purpose of these memories? Why does this defect in the system exist?
For Spiritism, nothing is by chance. These memories can be a tool for healing, allowing the soul to confront and overcome an old trauma that would prevent it from moving forward. They can be a sign of comfort for those who remained, proving that life continues. Or they can be the initial spark to fulfill a specific mission in this new existence. These childish voices, full of a past that does not belong to them, are, in the end, the most powerful evidence that we are much more than a body. We are immortal spirits on an eternal journey of learning, carrying within the soul the stories of who we once were, to write with more wisdom the story of who we are becoming.